In our democratic nations, citizens call shame on the unlawful treatment of the people of Tibet. We urge the government of China to show restraint as it deals with their legitimate concerns. We have hopes that under its new leader, Cuba will transition to full human rights and re-enter the world community. The US, however, remains disappointed with the UN's response to the protection of human rights. We need an action-oriented Human Rights Council. Offending governments must be held accountable for abuses. Those responsible for genocide in Darfur must be brought to justice. Strong action should be taken against the oppressive regime in Burma. Harassment and intimidation must stop in Zimbabwe, and those brave men and women there promoting democracy must receive our total support. The Human Rights Council squanders its credibility with its unbalanced approach to some problems. America remains committed to an independent, democratic, and viable Palestinian state that will live side by side with Israel in peace and security. We remain unhappy with one-sided resolutions which disproportionately single out Israel whilst failing to either scrutinize or condemn the most obvious global offenders: Myanmar, North Korea, Iran, Belarus, and Sudan. We will again not seek a seat on the Human Rights Council. We will not give it our full approval until we see evidence of more fair play. Success in dealing with challenges to human rights requires partnership. Differences between peoples are sometimes exaggerated. The commonalities that unite us are far more profound. Human rights remain the essence of a peaceful world. This was the founding conviction of the UN. With determination, it can provide the future for our world. Thank you.
I will now like to give the floor over to the delegate from Belarus.
Clear that the Universal Declaration on Human Rights is and will always be relevant, irrespective of the many differences among countries worldwide and the fact that it is not legally binding. Isn't it strange that the United Nations was formed by terms of a legally binding charter, while the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, a declaration confirming the acceptance of 30 rights, is not legally binding? These rights were adopted by the very same United Nations who initiated it on December 10, 1948. Ladies and gentlemen, anyone with a clear understanding of the rights outlined within the Declaration, the history of Belarus, and its constitution will agree that my country is a microcosm of its ideals. Belarus's rich and diverse ethnic population of Poles, Slavics, Russians, Lithuanians, and Germans are in keeping with Articles 1 to 3 and 6 to 7 of the Declaration that speaks about the entitlement of all rights, freedom, and equality within law. Our government's commitment to promote the ideals within the Declaration to educate its people, according to Articles 26 and 28 of the Declaration, was clearly demonstrated on December 22, 1997, when the Human Rights Educational Center was registered in Minsk. Articles 21 to 25 of the Declaration can only be realized once there's an alliance with Russia, a foreign policy objective pursued vigorously by our Honorable President, Alexander Lukashenko. While the framework for a new state was discussed on December 11, 2001, the process was established by a treaties between 1996 to 1999. Ladies and gentlemen, the very structure and nature of Belarus's industry determines our reliance on other Commonwealth of independent state countries, especially Russia, for our exports and imports. Belarus's membership in such organizations as the United Nations since 1946, the Commonwealth of Independent States, and part of the non-aligned movement since 1988, all attest to our rule of law, our style of governance, and international relationships. Lest we forget, Belarus's national sovereignty, established on July 27, 1990, was enforced by constitutional law in August 1991. We achieved Republican status on September 19, 1991. Don't we have a right to govern ourselves according to law like any other independent nation? Is this right only reserved for the United States of America and its cohorts? The sole purpose of constitutional changes is to align the country's development with the rule of law. As seen in Articles 10 to 17 of the Declaration, right for marriage and family, choice of government and elections, among other things. Why then should Belarus's constitutional changes be misconstrued? International recognition of Belarus via the negative criticism of Western and some European nations seems to be deliberately blind to our many positive achievements. It will be naive for anyone to believe that their concern is genuinely to promote or secure such human rights. This is just a facade to promote their narrow self-interest. You don't need to be a political scientist to see this. The United States Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice displays such a misguided notion in labeling my country as, and I quote, a part of the outposts of tyranny, end quote. This is quite far from reality. How different are my government's actions against political, social, religious, and economic considerations to that of any other country, especially our critics? The 165-7 vote reported by the United Nations Watch on November 22, 2007, confirms Belarus's resolve that the Universal Declaration on Human Rights is universally relevant, given the fact that it is not legally binding and considering the many differences among countries worldwide. Madam Moderator.
Mr. President, fellow delegates, all in affiliation with this assembly, good afternoon. The task of examining key factors about the Declaration of Human Rights in Guatemala has been handed down to me by the organizers of this assembly, and I would just like to say that I am honored to be entrusted with such a task. To this end, I will be most perspicacious in the presentation of my case and the articulation of my delivery. The Declaration of Human Rights